and thank you for joining us on this how to install the BreakingPoint Virtual Edition into a VMware EXI hypervisor. This will be the sample topology that I'll be used to go through the installation step by step. As with any installation, there are some prerequisites that needed to be in place for a successful installation and running a test. You have to have a VMware EXI hypervisor release 5.5 installed. With that, also you need to have installed some management switch and some test switches. These will be used during the installation as well. The second thing you need, the BreakingPoint Virtual Edition OVA, which you can download from on our website. And as you see from this diagram, there are two main components of this OVA. The virtual controller VM, which can and will manage from 1 to 12 virtual blade, and the second component is the virtual blade. And the virtual blade can have from 2 to 8 ports per blade per VM. The third thing you need, a DHCP server, because with this current release, the virtual controller, you cannot set static IP address. And also for the vBlade, you have to have a DHCP server. And the last step is to install the licensing prior of running a test. And now I'm going to switch to my EXI to show you how you could do the installation step by step. This is my EXI running version 5.5. And as I mentioned, prerequisite, you need to have a management switch and you need to have a test switch. As you install the BreakingPoint, you will be utilizing these predefined / pre-configured switches. So the first step is to deploy the OVA. You go under File, deploy from OVA from template, and point to the OVA you just downloaded. Click Next, then Next, and then in here you can name the virtual controller to anything you desire. You'll choose what data store. In my case, I have two different data stores. I'm going to use the local data store versus the SCSI. I'm going to select thin provisioning. And this is the virtual network for the management that we already saw, already pre-configured on the EXI. So I'll be using that particular network. Hit Finished. And also you can select power after the deployment. And in a few minutes, you will have a fully configured BreakingPoint system controller. We're going to see the Linux virtual controller or the system controller for the BreakingPoint is up and running. The next step is to start using the web UI to configure and start adding virtual blades and run test. But to do that, you need to know the IP address of the system controller. And to find out this information, you go to the console of the system controller, then you log in as admin, password admin as well, and you run netinfo and look for address 1, which in our case will be 192.168.82.94. Using HTTPS, we need to point to this address to get to the BreakingPoint web UI. I'm going to start the Chrome. You put the IP HTTPS 192.168.82.94. And also in here, you're presented with the login, which is also admin. Password is admin. And you log in. The first step to go under administration and VM deployment. And as you can see, I don't have any virtual card. And if I go to manage virtual chassis, as I mentioned earlier, for a system controller, we can support up to 12 slots. And as you can see in here, I don't have anything configured yet. So I go back to the create virtual blade and select configure virtual blade. The top half of the screen is talking about your VMware EXI. So in my case, I'm selecting the host type as VMware. The next step is to put the IP address or the host name for the EXI, and then you log in with username and password. Hit connect. At this point, the system controller is talking to the EXI machine. Now we're working with the bottom half of the screen where under name, I can put the virtual blade name. The default is fine. Number, this will be the number of slots and can be from 1 to 12. We're going to use a local data store. And this will be the management switch that the blade is going to connect to. And as we mentioned earlier, that will be the VM network. And the last step is to add how many, for this virtual blade, how many ports you need. You can have from 2 to 8 ports. Just for this demo, I'm going to select 4. So hit the plus. And also now I need to map these test ports. They're not going to the management. They're going to be using to the test network switch that I configured earlier as well. So to summarize, I have a virtual blade in slot 1, selected the data store, selected the management network, added 4 test ports to this virtual switch as well, the test switch. The next step is to hit apply, and then start deployment. You'll have a progress bar with the time duration that shows you step by step where we are in the installation. A successful installation will result in the last step having an IP address for the virtual blade. This process will take a few minutes. Actually, just finished. Just quickly to show you, if I go to so we see now we have the controller and we have the virtual blade. Now we're getting the management IP. With the IP address in this screen, that implies successful installation. And to further verify that, we can select Manage Virtual Chassis. And as you can see in slot 1, now we have a virtual blade called vblade01. We have the management IP, and we have number of test interfaces on which hypervisor. We can also now go to the session, new session. If I select the chassis, as you can see, we have a successful installation of slot 1 with 4 ports. The last step, install a valid license. We close this window, and then we go under Control Center, Administration, Licensing. And at that point, you would receive an activation license similar to this with a certain number of count. You go to this screen, you input the activation code and how many licenses you want to use, and you hit activate. A successful installation will show you the valid license in this line. You can also deactivate, and the last step, given your system controller is not on the network, so you cannot reach the Ixia site for the activation, you can click on the offline activation, follow these simple steps to activate offline and get your system controller up and running.